I'd like to ask Sarah and the Shanghai team to join the stage again, so we can have our Q&A session. While the others are getting connected, I do have a question immediately for you, Umair.
Yeah.
So you're talking a lot about the difference in solutions that you may need when dealing with gender, but I'm also wondering what impact is there on the design process itself? Is it sometimes difficult for you as a man to interact with the women during the design process? Do you have to take into account that you include women designers? Could you talk a little bit about that, please?
Yes. Like I said, we have to be very, very about the context we're going in. I could tell you I was thrown out of a house while they were not comfortable with the man in the house. So although I was accompanied by a female, researcher, but that's what I'm saying. So it is important that we know who are we trying to interview, and then manage the logistics accordingly. And it often helps that you have female researchers accompany you, but sometimes they're fine, they're comfortable, they speak with you. It depends what kind of persona you're dealing with, but especially when they're young, or they're more shy, have low agency, most of them, then it is advisable and it makes much more sense to have a female researcher with you, or conduct the whole research.
For you, Sarah, you were working in a context, of course, where all sorts of people, all walks of life come together. Are there situations that you notice there that you need to address people in different ways?
Yes, but I think it's more just accommodating for people's needs. Like, we can't always be ourselves in every situation. We take the part of ourselves that works best. We don't always know that there's someone in the room that can't read, but sometimes that's going to come up. And that just means you have to adapt. And I think probably being an occupational therapist and having had to think on my feet and do that actually meant that in a moment I can be like, fine, I'm going to sit with you and I'm going to be your scribe. Or, I think what it is about creating an environment that's comfortable enough for everyone to be able to be open about what their needs are. So that's how it works. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And maybe for you, Kathy, Bruce, and the team, in China being such a large and diverse country, what are typical challenges you may run into where in different parts or for different people you need to adjust your design process?
Did you hear the question? Can you repeat the question again? The audio. Yeah.
Oh. So China being such a large and diverse country, I can imagine that the requirements of the design process may be different in different parts of the China or for different groups. Could you talk about a situation where that might be the case?
Maybe I start. I think the design process in general is the same, but again, the cultural difference is hard. People often assume, wow, so billions of people here. If we get 1% of those, I will be a millionaire or billionaire, which is not true. Our market is very diverse, and the people's behavior and the people's culture difference is huge across of China, and also the generations and families. We needed to do a lot of research before we dive in solutions. So that's why our Shanghai chapter really promote research and insight-based innovation, rather than just boom, here we are. Solutions. So this is the challenge probably in our market. Rudy, maybe you have more to say about?
Yeah, I think we've seen also in this market leveraging some of the tools and capabilities around co-creation really allow both designers to more quickly understand what's happening in other people's lives, but also to bring those different cultures into the design process. And and allowing design to be accessible by many types of people, not only for designers themselves.
Speak about the process. We use Double Diamond as well, but I have wrote an article about a 5-element article was published in Touchpoint before. So those 5 elements is more about organizational level. I think in China it's very important to understand the organization before we are able to win any or to do any service related work. So organization, behavior, and the culture, those are very important here.
Yeah, I think I echo what Kathy says. Context is really king. The more context that we can understand, and it's not only about empathy, it's empathy within a set of context that allows us to make our outcomes from service design or any design more meaningful and also hopefully more measurable as well.
Yeah, that's an interesting perspective to start with the organization instead of starting with gathering insights from the user. I have a question for Sarah. You said your challenge was to support better collaboration between staff and patients. But can you give us some tips on how you can do that, like beyond organizing some co-creation workshops where people come together, but really structurally embedding that collaboration between the staff and the people in an organization?
Yeah, I think firstly, when I think about that, I think about having roles, like having defined roles and making sure that people know what their JD is before they step into something, if they're going to co-facilitate with you. And for me, I think it's about having an open discussion about what people's goals are and what are their capabilities and where do they come from, like not outside of their diagnosis. Who are they as a person? Do they feel confident? Do they want to just learn to speak in front of other people? And how can I then adapt or create an opportunity to lead together? And I think that whole thing about the power dynamics that exist that we don't talk about, that I'm impacted by, that everyone's impacted by in systems, and acknowledging that. And I think, maybe, and I will say this, maybe because I've had cancer, it's easier for me to off things that are, or make, like to make light of things that I know in the big system can be quite important. Because for me, I think I come at it from a different angle. But for me, I would say to, like, this sounds really silly, but I would say to a staff nurse, they'd go, I have this great idea for something I want to do. And I'd go, cool, do you want to just run it by a patient in the ward? Like, do you just want to just sense check it? And they were like, that's amazing. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, it's like not thinking in that adaptable way of, okay, even if I have a great idea, I said this before, an N of one is better than an N of none. Even just taking your ideas to the ward, to the people, sort of sharing those ideas with other people is already involving them. And then, deciding how that process will be. I mean, yeah, it takes time, and often there isn't the time or space or capacity. So I think in these roles, you really need to build that space in, and sort of work from there. But it's so simple to involve people. I mean, like, just ask. That's the basics of everything. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I notice during projects that it's easy to get people enthusiastic in the first place, and oh yeah, I want to do something with my idea. But then when it goes a bit beyond the focus of their role or the focus of the organization, it kind of blocks, and we're pushing and pulling, like, let's do something with this. But then I'm wondering if you have some like concrete tools, for example, the toolkit, I think would be already a great thing to introduce, so they have something very specific to work with. But yeah,
it's very guided. I think that's the whole thing. It's written in a language, like I looked at all the different toolkits online and even the NHS ones that are multiple pages and lots of words. And coming from a service design angle, I tried to make it more visual. I tried to really co-design and use the language that was already existed. So it's relatable and understandable for both patients and staff. It's like easy for them to follow, and it's written in a way that they kind of co-designed it. So they wrote it in their own language. And that was kind of the way that it worked. But there's things in there that everyone would know. So that's the whole point. It's the same old tricks, but what you don't understand is there's an audience of people that have never seen this stuff before, that don't understand it, that want to work this way, but don't often, they're not given extra training, especially not now, to do this stuff. So making something together was really useful for people.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're trying to get everybody involved in the design process, this is a question for all of you, maybe Umair first. So you want to include people in the design process. Some people say everybody is a designer. Others don't believe that. They believe the opposite. Where's your stance on that, Umair? Is everybody a designer, or how far can you take anybody into a design process?
I think we have done this in past, that we have included people from our clients to go with us on the research, and they have performed well. But you need to clearly define sort of boundaries of and roles of each of us, who's leading it, and because you don't want them to sometimes, they have a burning question and sitting in an interview, I have a question, you cannot do that in an interview setting, right? So there has to be some sort of, let's say, roles and everything. So what we do is we always mock before we go out in the field. Whoever we're taking along with, we have a mock exercise with them, and then later in the process, what we do is, let's say in let's say ideation or end of synthesis, we need to where we need to prioritize the insights, or where we need to prioritize the ideas, we actually involve more people from the client's end. So have a buy-in from them, actually make them walk them through the whole thing, transfer the second-hand empathy to them, and help them understand or help them make the decisions with us. Then we are standing on it together. So as long as the roles and boundaries are in place, there's no harm. And it actually helps the design process in my experience.
How about the Shanghai team?
Yeah, so I'll jump in quickly with a bit of an anecdote. I think humans in general have this capability, amazing capability and responsibility about being creative. And we've found that when involving people in co-creation that are not typically part of a design process, they do also go through a transformative process where they start to realize again that they do have the ability to make change. They have the ability to be a part of designing something better and creating that. And with that comes a lot of responsibility of the practitioners and designers that have been trained to not leave them hanging, but to provide them with these guided tools that they can go on and can carry on the practice of change, the practice of creation, not only just the practice of design. It's something that we have inherent. That's my perspective. Kathy?
The co-creation.
Well, designers as being involved in, designers versus non-designers being involved in the design process. How far can we go?
This is our daily life. Our team is half designer, half non-designers, strategists, research. And not only that, we also bring the customer in, be part of the process. Customers as customers.
Client and customer.
Yeah, client and customers. Yeah, we find that that's really the good process, good practice. We are embracing this process for the past 10 years of service design doing in China.
Yeah. And coming together around a purpose or a reason to make change seems to be a very critical point. So all of the reframing that happens, challenging what the questions are that we're trying to answer, and really getting aligned on what it is that we want to make change against when the design process is going on. And then you can include the right stakeholders at the right time, addressing the right parts of the problem.
You, Sarah, how
do
you see this?
For me, it's sort of the opposite. It's like nothing exists right now. You're really eager. The energy is there. Let's jump into the deep end. Oh my God, we're drowning. We're drowning. Oh my God, I didn't know that was so hard for you. Shit, I really stuffed up. I should have been more supportive. I should have guided you better. okay, talk to me. And, you know, through that process, that's how something good came out of it. And to be really honest with you, I can't promise now that I've left that anything I've done has stuck or whatever. Everyone's using different things. This is the transient nature of stuff. But I do know for a fact that in that moment and with those patients who were involved, they felt empowered. Like one guy who couldn't speak, like he was very, very unwell. Like he'd got a second bout of cancer. And we went and we presented journey mapping to a room full of people, and he was like co-presenting. So we did it together, and he was kind of talking people through and taking the lead. And at the end of the session, he said, you know, Sarah, since I got sick, I've stepped back and I've stopped doing this at work. But you know what? I actually really love this. This is what I love doing. And like, okay, we're not maybe going to change the world or how other people think, and the system is big and messy, but if I can give those experiences to people and really walk alongside them and try as much as possible to level out all this stupid power stuff and actually work together, then I feel like it's worth sometimes the horrible feeling I have of ick inside when I'm trying to do a change or work with someone or, you know, work in that way. I have to hold a lot of ickiness. That's the truth, but it's worth it.
Yeah, to have an impact on people's personal life as well. Yeah, I see a very popular question here in the chat. It's about the lack of trust in digital services. I think we often get asked to digitize a service, and we should be maybe a bit more careful on what to digitize and what not. But specifically, this was a question for Umair about the lack of trust in digital services for a low-income population, and what are the big barriers that they are facing with digital services, and how we as designers should tackle this. Do you have an insight on that from your research, Umair?
Sure. So first of all, as per my first-hand experience, the digital services which were designed, and you know, we did the observation for, let's say, one of the largest social safety net programs for women in Pakistan, and all of those grants were transferred digitally just to enhance, just to reduce the fraudulent activities which weren't there when they were, for example, using post office, right? So is digital solving all the problems? Maybe not. Is digital helping reduce? Yes. But it's not just this interface, right? We have to design the experience of them coming in, sitting down, how to train the agents, how they interact with them, and then make them aware of certain things, that what are their rights, what they can demand, and how they should interact. And then comes to the digital interface designing. Is that understandable for her or not? That, you know, so it's a combination of a lot of things which can help make things better, more trustworthy. Because what we have found out that they stick to what they already know. Most of them, they do not want to try new services until and unless they see a neighbor or someone from the same setting trying out something and they're successful. And then all of a sudden they become curious. Hey, what is that? What are you doing? Maybe we can do that as well. Maybe we can get benefited from that as well. So it's again, it's a lot of things, a lot of factors which go into building the trust in the service. But then digital is, let's say, one component of it. It also helps you reduce, it makes everything more transparent. You cannot, you know, play the system, but people tend to always find a way. That's, you know, how things are. But it helps that. But you need to think more holistically if you want to bring the trust back, and then you want them to trust more of your service or product which you intend them want to use it.
Any reflections from the Shanghai side of the world?
Maybe I'll start. Actually, I did a project for rich people. not poor people, recently.
Manage rich people's money.
Yes, how to manage rich people's money. Actually, rich people need more trust during the digital services, because they have more money. They will say, where's my money going? So for those rich people, usually they like face-to-face service and one-on-one services. But now a lot of services digitally. So this is a transition actually for rich people. And I think what we need to do in the future is how to service the digital service, how to provide digital service as a person. How can digital service has some like a personality? What kind of role it can make or take during the service process? So I think this is a very interesting topic in the future. I would like to explore on this. Do you have anything to say? Add something? Thank you.
Great. Maybe a final question to round off, which we see popping up quite often in the Q&A as well. How do you manage during these not so collaborative personal times that you don't see a lot of the end users, you don't see a lot of your colleagues? How do you make sure that you keep on working together and you keep on co-creating? What's like maybe from everyone, one tip that you can give on this really helps us to still work together with everyone that it's necessary?
I just want to say, I think sometimes let's pretend we're in 1996 and get on the phone and have a good old phone call, because actually that's really nice for my introvert people, and it's really nice for some clients who feel like they can't access Zoom, and like the, you know, and just have them online and have people on speakerphone. I've been doing that a lot, and I find that really helpful for connection, like just to talk to people. And sometimes you're more honest when you talk. I think they did a study that says you can tell a lie from a phone, but not from an image. So if you're, you know, a bit dodgy about people, it's good to listen, you know. Yes. Listening is a skill. So I'd say that, yeah, definitely talk to people. Yeah. And don't you find though that all of these tools, if anything, are actually making the playfield to some respect fairer, because you can access people much more flexibly. You get to people who are hard to reach, who maybe wouldn't have been able to come in, you know, so it's a double-edged sword, I think. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, great tip. A good old-fashioned call. Thanks, Sarah. What about you, Umair?
I think if yeah, during the COVID time as well, we have to, you know, work from home, etc., and all that. So if you have the right people in your team, and any tool can work, and you just basically use tools to just, you know that things are working. And because there's a fundamental trust in, because everyone takes responsibility of their work. And this is how I think the future of work, or the culture of work, will evolve for all of us. And we have learned it the hard way during this COVID situation. But I am personally, and my team, we're getting comfortable with it. But I do also enjoy, writing post-its on a note, and cracking jokes, and then in a single boardroom, we're trying to figure out something. That also I kind of miss that. So I think it's a healthy combination of both that actually can increase productivity a lot. Tools, doesn't matter, whatever you're comfortable with, that's fine. There's already a lot in the market.
Sorry, Umair, I just wanted to jump in and say one more thing. Play games, play. That's the other thing. That's super fun.
Do you have an example of a good game?
I like the, now everyone get up and bring me one thing that's getting you through this lockdown, and show me your super thing that is, holding you down. And then everyone runs up and is like, this gin is really saving me right now. So it's great. You just get a more human
Great.
response.
That's a good final tip. All right. Thank you all very much for your talks and for your answers to these questions.